Some scars stick around, like old friends who remind you how tough you really are. This is the story of a woman who turned heartbreak into grit when her world fell apart. My name's Jane Olivia Sanders, and I'm 83 now, but let me take you back to when I was just 19, chasing dreams in a world that felt full of promise. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, in a hard-working, no-frills family. Dad drove trucks, Mum stitched dresses, and I was the only girl among 4 brothers. Talk about learning to hold your own early. Quick pause. Where are you reading this from? Drop a comment, and if you're enjoying this, give it a like or follow. It means the world to keep these stories alive. It was 1956, and America was humming with hope. Elvis was crooning on the radio, Eisenhower was in the White House, and small-town girls like me dreamed big despite the odds stacked against women. I worked as a clerk at Johnson's Pharmacy, right in the heart of Springfield's town square. That's where I met William. He strolled in one sticky January afternoon, sharp in a suit that laughed at the heat, asking for aspirin. William Richards, 27, a bank guy fresh from Chicago, had a smile that could melt ice. "Got anything for a racing heart, miss?" he teased, and I turned redder than a summer tomato. By the time I handed him the pills, I'd said yes to coffee after my shift. Dad, strict as they came back then, wasn't thrilled about some city slicker courting me. "Those guys are trouble," he'd grumble. But William had a charm that could win over a stone wall, and soon even Dad was eating out of his hand. 6 months later, we tied the knot in December 1956 at First Presbyterian Church. Mum and my aunts poured 3 months into sewing my lace and satin dress, and my bouquet of daisies and white roses felt like something out of a movie. William looked like a Hollywood star, and I swear I was the luckiest woman alive. We settled into a cosy rented house near downtown. It wasn't much, but to me it was our castle. I poured my heart into it, embroidering tablecloths, planting geraniums in the yard. William got a promotion to assistant manager at the bank, promising we'd buy our own place soon. In 1958, our daughter Mary Ann arrived. Seeing William cradle her, tears in his eyes, made me think our happiness was just getting started. Sundays were my favourite. We'd go to church, have lunch with my folks or William's aunt, then stroll through the park, William pushing Mary Ann's stroller while folks smiled and said, "What a picture-perfect family." I'd beam with pride. We'd catch movies sometimes, Humphrey Bogart on the screen, me dreaming of Audrey Hepburn's elegance. Life felt like a dream until it didn't. In 1960, I got pregnant again. This time it was rough, bed rest for the last stretch. That's when I noticed William changing. He'd come home late, blaming bank work, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He'd bring flowers or candy for Mary Ann, apologising for the long hours. Our second daughter, Elizabeth, arrived in March 1961 during a stormy night. The delivery was tough, landing me in the hospital for a week. William showed up for visiting hours, always rushed. "The bank's a mess, Jane. Inflation's got everyone pulling out cash." I nodded, thinking I got it. With 2 little ones, I was stretched thin. When I brought Elizabeth home, William seemed off, distant, snappy when the baby cried, or when Mary Ann, barely 3, begged for his attention. I started noticing things. A whiff of unfamiliar perfume, late-night showers that didn't quite mask it. I pushed down the doubts. What choice did I have? No job, 2 kids, totally dependent on him. Then Mrs. Wilson, our neighbour, dropped a bomb. "Jane, you're too good for this," she said, her voice heavy with concern. She'd heard whispers. William spotted with Carol, a new bank employee, at the country club, cosy at Pine Restaurant. I brushed it off as work stuff, but she wasn't having it. "Work doesn't end with kisses in parking lots, honey." That night I stared at the ceiling, William snoring beside me, feeling a chasm growing between us. The next morning I casually asked about Carol. He froze, then played it cool. "She's in the foreign exchange department. Why?" I shrugged, but the seed of distrust was planted. Lipstick on shirts, hushed phone calls. Weekend work at the bank, it all piled up. Then, in July 1961, Mary Ann got sick, really sick. Measles turned into pneumonia, and she ended up in the hospital. I was a wreck, splitting time between her bedside and Elizabeth, who stayed with Mom. William? He'd pop in. Never for long. Bank stuff, Jane. On the third night, as Mary Ann's fever finally broke, I called the bank at 9 p.m. William had said he was working late. "Mr. Richards left at 6, ma'am," the doorman said. Sitting by my daughter's hospital bed, I cried, not just for her, but for the marriage I thought I had, crumbling like sand in my hands. Where was he? Who was he with? Why lie when our little girl was fighting for her life? Mary Ann pulled through, and for a few days William was the husband I'd fallen for. Attentive, kind. But the late nights and excuses crept back. I stayed quiet, focused on the girls. Divorce, that was a dirty word in 1961. Scandal, shame, and how would I provide for my kids? Then, in December, William announced he'd bought us a house in a new neighbourhood for bank employees. It was bigger, with a yard for the girls. I should have been thrilled, but something inside me was already broken. We moved in January 1962, and the neighbours threw us a welcome party. I smiled, played the part of the happy wife. But the new house held ugly truths. I found receipts for fancy dinners, gifts I never got, a gold brooch, French perfume. Then, in a desk drawer, a photo. William and a beautiful woman, arms around each other by a waterfall. On the back, in loopy handwriting, "Forever yours, Carol," dated July 1961, when Mary Ann was in the hospital. I confronted him that night. He denied it, then flipped, angry I'd snooped. Finally, he admitted to the affair with Carol. "It's nothing, Jane. You're always busy with the kids. A man has needs." His coldness gutted me. He turned it around, saying I'd let myself go, that I was lucky he stuck around to put a roof over our heads. Worst of all, I started believing him. The next months were a slow unravelling. William didn't bother hiding Carol anymore. He'd stumble in late, drunk or moody, and I never knew which version of him I'd get. The girls felt it. Mary Ann had nightmares. Elizabeth cried for no reason. In August 1962, a bank friend told me Carol was pregnant. My world shattered. When William got home, his bags were packed. "Go live your other life," I said, steady as stone despite the storm inside. He laughed, a cruel, cutting sound, and sneered, "What are you going to do, Jane? Who's going to want you, an old hag with 2 kids?" I was 25, but I felt ancient, weighed down by a broken marriage and a future I couldn't see. He left that night, taking just a suitcase, and there I was, standing in a house that wasn't really mine, wondering how to pick up the pieces. "You'll be begging me to come back," William sneered as he walked out. It was August 1962, and 6 years of what started as a fairy tale marriage had crashed into a nightmare. There I was, 25, alone with 2 little girls, no job, no savings, and a small town ready to slap a scarlet D for divorced on my forehead. But deep down, something fierce whispered, "You've got this, Jane. This isn't the end. It's the start of a new chapter for you and your girls." I shut the door on William that night, heart pounding with fear, but also a stubborn spark of resolve. Mary Ann and Elizabeth were my reason to keep going, and I'd write a new story for us, no matter how scary the blank page looked. What I didn't know then was that kicking William out was just the first battle in a war I hadn't signed up for. The next morning I woke to banging on the door. Mrs. Wilson, my neighbour, stood there, eyes wide, clutching a newspaper. "Jane, you got to see this." In the business section, there it was, William Richards named General Manager at First National Bank's Central Branch. A photo showed him grinning next to other suited men, looking every bit the golden boy. "Did you know?" Mrs. Wilson asked. Nope, not a clue. William hadn't breathed a word about a promotion. For a split second I wondered if it was meant to be a surprise. Then it hit me. He was building a new life, one that didn't include me or the girls, probably with Carol. A week went by, no word from him. The cash I'd squirreled away in a cookie tin from grocery money was running low. Mary Ann asked for her dad every day, her little voice breaking my heart. Even Elizabeth, barely 2, seemed to sense the void, fussing more than usual. Then came the gut punch, a notice to vacate our house. Turns out the bank owned it, and William's employee perk of living there ended with his transfer. We had 30 days to get out. That night I cried until my eyes burned dry. The next day I put on my best dress and marched to the bank to confront William. The security guard stopped me cold. Mr. Richards said no family interruptions. Family? Like I was some distant cousin, not the woman who'd raised his kids and kept his life running for 6 years. On my way out, I saw her, Carol. I'd never met her, but that face from the waterfall photo was unmistakable. She glowed, her pregnancy showing under a chic dress, chatting with a friend. The doctor says it's a boy, I overheard. A boy. William always wanted a son. I dragged myself home, crushed. No home, no money, no plan. That's when Mum showed up, worried because I'd missed Sunday lunch. I broke down in her arms, spilling everything. She held me tight, then said, "Jane, you've got 2 paths. Cry over what's gone or build something new for you and those girls." Her words lit a fire in me. The next morning, I left the kids with her and headed to the county clerk's office. Surprise! William had put the house in his name only. Legally, I had nothing. A lawyer at the courthouse said I could try suing for abandonment, but with William's shiny bank job, my odds were slim. With no other choice, I moved us into my parents' place. Dad, stern as ever, shocked me with his support. "That jerk never fooled me," he muttered, clearing out Mum's old sewing room for me and the girls. Still, the shame stung. In Springfield, whispers followed me. "That's Jane, dumped for the bank girl." Mary Ann came home crying one day because a friend's mum wouldn't let them play. "Aunt Nancy says it's a sin you're not with Daddy," she sobbed. How do you tell a 4-year-old the sin wasn't hers to carry? By November, money was gone. Dad's truck driving gig barely covered their bills, let alone ours. Then Mrs. Wilson came through with a lifeline. Her sister, Mrs. Matthews, ran a boarding house downtown for working women and students. They needed someone to cook and clean, low pay, but it came with a small room for me and the girls. I jumped at it. I'd never worked a kitchen, but I learned fast. Up at 5 a.m, I'd whip up breakfast, scrub rooms, wash mountains of laundry, and cook lunch and dinner. My hands, once soft enough for William to brag about, cracked from soap and burned at the stove. But we had a roof, food, and a shred of pride I was clawing back. In March 1963, a boarder mentioned William and Carol had married. Their son Richard was born in January. I cried that night, not for William, but for the family he'd replaced us with. Mary Ann started struggling at school, her bright spark dimming. Her teacher called me in. "She needs her dad," she said, as if I could snap my fingers and make him appear. I tried explaining, but the teacher, single and childless, just told me to be strong. So I was. Days I worked like a machine at the boarding house. Nights I sewed dresses and hems on Mum's old Singer for extra cash. In the quiet hours, exhaustion brought dreams. Sometimes nightmares of William stealing the girls, sometimes cruelly sweet visions of him coming back. Waking up was the hardest part. Then, in July 1963, a letter arrived from William's lawyer. My heart raced, hoping for an apology. Instead, it was ice cold. A legal separation request. Illinois didn't do divorce then, with a pathetic alimony offer that wouldn't cover a week's groceries. Worse, a threat. Accept or he'd use his clout to take the girls, claiming I wasn't fit to raise them in a boarding house while he could offer a real home. I shattered reading that. Take my girls. They were my everything, the only reason I kept going. I found Mr. Emmanuel, a kind older lawyer who took my case for next to nothing. "I've got a daughter your age," he said. He fired back, demanding fair alimony based on William's fat new salary and refusing to budge on custody. 2 weeks later, William agreed to better alimony, but wanted bi-weekly visits with the girls. Mr. Emmanuel urged me to say yes. "It's their right to see their father," he said gently. I agreed, though it felt like swallowing glass. The first visit was set for a Sunday in September. I dressed the girls in their best, mended but spotless. Mary Ann buzzed with excitement, chattering about what she'd tell her dad. Elizabeth, barely 2, just fed off her sister's joy. We waited in the town square as planned. 1 hour, 2. The sun sank, and Mary Ann's hopeful questions, "Is Daddy coming yet?" broke my heart. By 6, when the church clock chimed, he was a no-show. We trudged back to the boarding house, Mary Ann crying quietly, Elizabeth asleep in my arms. That night, squeezed into our narrow bed, I made a vow. William would never hurt my girls like that again. If he didn't want to be a dad, I wouldn't beg him. I'd be enough for them. I had to be. The months that followed were about finding our footing. The boarding house did well, and Mrs. Matthews gave me a small raise. I started night classes in sewing at a local trade school, leaving the girls with a sweet boarder studying to be a teacher. By spring 1964, while the country wrestled with civil rights, I was waging my own quiet revolution. I stopped counting on William, leaning instead on my parents, the boarders who'd become friends, and Mrs. Matthews, who felt like a second mum. Child support. It came late, if at all, but I was learning to stand on my own, one stitch at a time. William's child support checks? They were as reliable as a broken clock. By early 1965, I stopped holding my breath for them and leaned harder into my sewing. My dresses, party frocks and kids' clothes were starting to turn heads in Springfield. Soon I was stitching dreams for half the neighbourhood, and it felt like I was sewing my own life back together, one thread at a time. But life's never just smooth sailing, is it? That January, Mary Ann started acting off, headaches, vomiting, fevers that came and went. The clinic doctor took one look and said, "Stress. Kids feel the weight of the world too, you know." My 8-year-old was carrying worries no kid should. I did my best to lighten her load, bedtime stories full of adventure, Sunday park picnics, little parties with neighbourhood kids. Still, William's absence hung over us like a stubborn cloud. Mary Ann would watch other dads scoop up their kids at school, her eyes heavy with questions she didn't ask. Then Mrs. Matthews, my rock at the boarding house, got sick. Cancer, advanced, the doctors said. I took over running Meadow House while she fought through treatments, cooking, cleaning, balancing books, shopping, raising my girls, sewing, and sneaking hospital visits when I could. I was burning the candle at both ends, but what choice did I have? In March, Mrs. Matthews called me to her bedside. Her frail hand squeezed mine. "Jane, you're the daughter I never had. When I'm gone, I want you to have Meadow House. Keep its name. Keep it a home for working women." I sobbed, begging her to fight, but we both knew. She passed in April. At 28, I was the owner of a small business. The boarders threw a party, relieved that Mrs. Matthews's nephew wouldn't turn the place into condos or worse. Meadow House was mine, a lifeline and a legacy. But then, out of the blue, William showed up. Thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, he looked like a shadow of the man I'd married. My heart did a stupid little flip. Old habits die hard, until he opened his mouth. "I'm here to see the girls. Heard you're running this place now." His tone dripped with something sour, jealousy maybe. Mary Ann, hurt and angry, hid behind me. "You never came before," she whispered. Elizabeth, barely remembering him, clung to my apron. He stayed 10 awkward minutes and left, promising to return. Spoiler, he didn't. Word got back through a former boarder. William had been fired from the bank for shady accounting. Carol had left him, taking their son Richard. He was drinking heavily, scraping by in Chicago. I didn't gloat. My heart ached for Richard, growing up without a dad, just like my girls. Maybe a tiny part of me felt the universe balancing the scales, but mostly I just felt sad for a man who'd thrown everything away. By Christmas 1965, I was standing taller. From a broken wife to a business owner, from despair to determination. I wasn't the same Jane. The pain was still there, like an old bruise, but hope had moved in too. That Christmas, surrounded by our little tree and the boarders who'd become family, Mary Ann asked, "Mum, are you happy?" I hugged her and Elizabeth close. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm happy because we've got each other." Little did I know, William wasn't done stirring up trouble, and life had more curveballs waiting. Meadow House became my phoenix, rising from the ashes of my old life. By 1966, it was buzzing. 8 rooms always full, with a waiting list of teachers, shop clerks and students. Women working for themselves was still a bold move back then, and I was proud to give them a home. I turned an old storage room into 2 new rentals and hired Aurora, a kind widow, to help in the kitchen. Mary Ann, now 8, was a serious kid, her dad's absence leaving quiet gaps in her chatter. Elizabeth, 5, rarely asked about him, but one day she looked up and said, "Other girls have dads, why don't we?" I knelt down, heart aching. "Families come in all shapes, honey. Ours is small, but it's bursting with love." William's cheque stopped completely that March. Mr. Emmanuel, my lawyer, tracked him down, but he'd vanished from Springfield. "Let him go," Mr. Emmanuel said. "You're doing fine without him." And I was. That Easter, I opened a sewing studio next to the boarding house. My dresses were a hit, even catching the eye of Springfield's fancy ladies. I hired 2 young women from tough backgrounds, both wizards with a needle. "You're different, Mrs. Sanders," one of them, Lucy, said. "You fell hard and climbed back up. Most women don't." Her words hit deep. How many women like me never got the chance to rise? I started taking on apprentices, single mums, widows, teaching them to sew for free. Like Mum always said, give a fish, teach to fish. In July, an old bank colleague, Helen, visited from Chicago. Over coffee she hesitated, then spilled. Carol had ditched William a year ago after catching him with other women, bank interns no less. He'd spiralled, lost his job for stealing from accounts, and was now selling insurance, living in a dingy Chicago boarding house. His perfect life with Carol? Dust. Meanwhile, I'd built a small empire, Meadow House, my sewing studio, my girls growing strong. Even Richard's stepdad had legally adopted him. The irony wasn't lost on me. William, who mocked my boarding house life, was now living it. 1967 brought new hurdles. Inflation was eating profits, and some boarders struggled to pay rent. I got creative, starting a barter system. Some gave lessons to my girls, others helped with chores or bookkeeping. A boarder, Teresa, an accounting student, had a wild idea: turn Meadow House into a cooperative. I'd stay the owner, but everyone would pitch in, money, work, whatever they could. It worked. Meadow House became more than a place to crash. It was a community, a haven for women carving their own paths in a world that didn't always cheer them on. My sewing studio grew too, selling ready-made dresses in downtown stores. I hired more seamstresses, all women with stories like mine, stitching their own comebacks. Then in September, trouble. Elizabeth, now 6, came home from school shaking. A man claiming to be her dad had approached her. She'd run to Aurora, terrified. A neighbour confirmed it was William, drunk and erratic. I marched to the police the next morning. The sheriff, looking bored, shrugged. "Can't stop a father from seeing his kid, Mrs. Sanders. Be glad he's interested." I wanted to scream. Interested? After years of ghosting us? After scaring my little girl? I explained. But he just waved me off. That night, I held Elizabeth tight, promising she'd never have to see him if she didn't want to. But deep down, I knew William wasn't done with us yet. I stormed out of the sheriff's office fuming. William's right to scare my daughter? What about Elizabeth's right to feel safe, to not have some drunken ghost from her past pop up out of nowhere? It was another reminder that the world bent over backward for men, even ones who ditched their families. But I wasn't about to let William disrupt our lives again. To keep the girls safe, I hired Joseph, Aurora's brother, to pick them up from school. A widower raising his son, Anthony, alone, Joseph knew the grind of single parenting. We bonded over it, swapping stories of sleepless nights and small victories. He was respected in town, while I, the divorced mum, still caught side eyes. Still, our friendship felt like a warm blanket on a chilly night. One Sunday at the farmer's market I spotted William. He was a wreck, gaunt, dishevelled, eyes yellowed like old paper. He started toward us, but Joseph stepped in front, a quiet shield. William stumbled off, and Joseph turned to me. "You know him?" I swallowed hard. The girl's dad. Not love or longing, just the ache of seeing someone waste their life. Joseph's voice softened. "He's not okay, Jane. Focus on you and the girls. Some folks don't want saving." His words stuck, like a song you can't shake. I'd spent years wondering what I could have done to save my marriage. Now I saw it clear. William chose his path. Betrayal, abandonment. I chose to rebuild. That December, at Meadow House's Christmas party, Joseph caught me off guard. In the quiet of the back garden, kids laughing and boarders singing carols inside, he proposed. "No rush to answer," he said, his voice gentle. "I know you've got scars." Lying awake that night, watching my girls sleep, I wrestled with it. Joseph was solid, kind, hard-working, great with Mary Ann and Elizabeth. Marriage could mean stability, a real family for my girls, a partner for me. But it also meant risking the independence I'd fought tooth and nail for. On Christmas morning, I told him, "I need time, Joseph. It's not you, it's my scars. I've earned my freedom, and I'm not sure I can share the wheel yet." He nodded, no pressure, and we stayed friends. Our kids grew up like cousins, sharing park days, movie nights and potlucks. In 1968, America was a pressure cooker. Vietnam War protests, civil rights battles, tension everywhere. At Meadow House, we quietly took in 2 students on the run for their activism. Teresa, now my right-hand woman with her accounting degree, warned me, "This could bring trouble, Jane. These are dicey times." I shrugged. What's riskier than turning away someone who needs help? I'd been that woman once with nowhere to go. We gave them a safe place to land. Then, in March 1969, tragedy hit. William, blackout drunk, caused a car crash that killed a young couple. He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Helen, my old bank contact, called to warn me. People might talk, prep the girls. I sat them down, tailoring the truth to their ages. Mary Ann, 11, stared at the floor. "He chose this, didn't he, Mum? Nobody made him." Elizabeth, 8, clung to a fuzzy image of her dad. "Will prison fix him? Will he be sorry?" I hugged her tight. "I don't know, sweetheart. We can hope he finds his way." That night, Joseph showed up with daisies, my favourite. We sat on the porch, talking about choices and their ripples. How William went from bank star to inmate, leaving pain in his wake. "People think divorce is failure," I said, "but sometimes it's survival. If I'd stayed, maybe I'd have been in that car, or the girls." Joseph took my hand, no strings attached. "You didn't just survive, Jane. You bloomed. That's more than most folks manage." Life settled into a rhythm. Meadow House thrived, with a waiting list that kept growing. The sewing studio supplied 4 Springfield shops and 2 in Chicago. We formalised the cooperative, thanks to a lawyer's help, and Aurora's idea for a small restaurant downstairs took off. Her southern cooking was a hit. Then, in October, a letter came from the prison, William's shaky handwriting a far cry from the confident scrawl I once knew. He begged to see the girls, said he was sick, talked of regret and forgiveness. I sat in the garden, clutching the letter, staring at the roses I'd planted. echoes of my wedding bouquet. I showed it to Mary Ann and Elizabeth. "Your choice," I told them. Mary Ann shook her head. "Not now, Mum. Maybe some day." Elizabeth hesitated. "Can I think about it? I don't know how I feel." I wrote back, calm and clear. The girls weren't property. They'd decide when they were ready. I ended with, "I hope you find the peace I did, William. Redemption's there if you're willing to walk toward it." Christmas 1969 was magic. Meadow House glowed with lights, and the boarders, many far from their own families, planned a big dinner in the new restaurant. Joseph and Anthony brought a surprise, 2 fluffy snow-white rabbit kits for the girls, who squealed with joy. "Everyone needs something to love," Joseph said, grinning. Later, he handed me a small box. "Not a proposal, I swear," he laughed, seeing my face. Inside was a silver flower brooch. For the woman who found beauty among thorns. At dinner, surrounded by my girls, Joseph, Aurora, the boarders, and my seamstresses, I raised a glass in a silent toast to the 19-year-old clerk who fell for a charming banker. She couldn't have dreamed of this life, the falls, the flights, the thorns, and the flowers she'd grown through them. As the 1970s dawned, America felt the squeeze of a recession. TV ads sold happy families, but inflation hit hard, and keeping Meadow House affordable was a juggling act. Creativity kept us afloat, bartering, cutting corners, holding tight to our community. In March 1970, Mary Ann turned 12, no longer the shy kid missing her dad. She was sharp, responsible, and natural at numbers. At the farmer's market, she haggled like a pro, earning grins from vendors. "That girl's got your fire," Mr. Jones, the butcher, said after she nabbed a discount on meat for the restaurant. I swelled with pride. Mary Ann was my mirror, determined, practical, but carrying her own quiet scars. Sometimes I'd catch her watching other girls with their dads, her eyes asking questions she didn't voice. Mary Ann's far-off stares told a story her lips never did, a quiet ache for the dad who left. At 9, Elizabeth was her opposite, a bubbly artist, stitching tiny dresses for her dolls with atelier scraps, dreaming up fairy tales where William came back, sorry and changed. "He's in prison, right, Mom? Will he visit when he's out?" she'd ask, eyes wide with hope. I walked a tightrope, trying to be honest without crushing her dreams or tarnishing the father she barely knew. In May 1970, a letter from William's lawyer landed like a brick through my window. He had liver cirrhosis, was stuck in the prison hospital, and, get this, wanted house arrest under my roof since he had no family left. William, back in our lives, the man who'd betrayed us, threatened to take my girls, and crashed his life into ruin, killing 2 people. I couldn't imagine him in Meadow House upending the peace we'd built. Joseph, my rock, urged caution. "You've got a good thing going, Jane. Don't let him drag you back." Teresa, ever practical, suggested paying for a nurse and an apartment elsewhere. "You owe him nothing," I asked the girls, as always. Mary Ann, wise beyond her 12 years, snapped, "He made his mess. Why is it our job to clean it up?" Elizabeth, softer, saw a chance. "He's sick, Mum. Maybe we can make peace." I wrestled with it for days. Finally, I decided no way was he moving in, but I'd rent a small place downtown, hire a nurse, and let the girls visit if they wanted. Not for William, for them, so they'd never wonder, what if? Before I could send the letter, news came in June. William died in the prison hospital, cirrhosis and pneumonia taking him out. Alone, no family by his side. It hit me like a wave I didn't see coming. I didn't love him anymore, but I'd loved him once. In the garden, I cried, not for the traitor, but for the charming guy at the pharmacy, the dad my girls deserved but never got, the life he threw away. Telling them was brutal. Mary Ann, 12, took it quietly, but later I found her sobbing, clutching an old photo from her 3rd birthday. "He's a stranger, Mum, but I still feel this hole." Elizabeth, 9, broke down. He'll never take me to the carousel like Annie's dad. Her dream of him was gone for good. The funeral was small, just me, the girls, Joseph, Mr. Emmanuel, and 2 bank colleagues. Helen drove from Chicago, laying daisies on the casket. "You knew the real William," she said. I wondered who that was, the banker who charmed me, the husband who held Mary Ann, the cheater, the drunk, or some messy mix of all of them. Weeks later, a shock, William's old life insurance policy, from his bank days, named me and the girls as beneficiaries. It wasn't a fortune, but it'd cover college for both. A final decent act, Joseph said. Or maybe a late apology. I'd never know. That same month, a pregnant 17-year-old, Diana, showed up at Meadow House, kicked out by her parents. Her story hit close to home. I gave her a room, light work in the restaurant, and a promise to help after the baby came. Nosy Mrs. Elliot, the neighbourhood's morality police, clucked, "Meadow House takes those girls now." I ignored her. Opinions don't pay bills or heal hearts. Diana had a boy, Gabriel, in November. Her parents, softened by their grandson, welcomed her back, but Diana had fire in her. "I want to work, Dad. Mrs. Sanders showed me I can be a mum and independent." We worked it out. She'd live with them, but keep her restaurant job and night classes. Another of my girls, as I called the women Meadow House lifted up. In 1971, Southern Comfort, our restaurant, started drawing crowds beyond the boarding house. We decided to expand, sinking years of savings into renovating the ground floor. Risky, sure, but Teresa's numbers said it'd pay off. Mary Ann, 13, was all in, checking materials, haggling with suppliers, suggesting tweaks to save cash. The foreman was impressed. "She's going to be an architect," Mary Ann corrected him, fierce as ever. "Civil engineer." Engineering was a man's world back then, but when I mentioned that, she shrugged. "So? You run a boarding house, restaurant and atelier, Mum. You showed me women can do anything." My heart swelled. Of all the lessons I'd tried to teach, that one, independence, breaking barriers, mattered most. The restaurant reopened in August, now seating 60, with a glowing Southern Comfort sign out front, a nod to Aurora's cooking, now famous citywide. The opening night had a line down the block, and Joseph, who cheered us on, beamed like it was his own win. Our relationship was unconventional. Not married, not living together, but sharing dinners, park Sundays, and quiet support. Our kids were like siblings. Mum worried about gossip. "People talk, Jane," I laughed. "I'm 34, with 2 businesses and 2 amazing girls. Let them talk." Christmas 1971 brought a surprise from Joseph. Tickets to Miami. "You've never left Springfield. The girls need to see the ocean." It was a splurge, but Mary Ann was already planning museum trips, while Elizabeth dreamed of waves and ice cream. In January 1972, we left Aurora and Teresa in charge and headed to Florida. Miami was a dream. Art Deco buildings, South Beach, Key Biscayne. For small-town girls, it was like stepping into a postcard. Elizabeth stood frozen before the ocean, whispering, "It's bigger than everything, Mum." Mary Ann scribbled every detail in her diary, soaking it all in. I watched them, heart full, knowing this trip was a gift not just from Joseph, but from the life I'd built from ashes. Miami was like a shot of sunlight straight to the soul. Those 2 weeks in 1972 opened our eyes to a world bigger than Springfield. Mary Ann came back fired up, nose in her books, dreaming of college and far-off places. Elizabeth? She fell in love with painting, hooked after we wandered into a modern art exhibit bursting with colour and wild shapes. "Mum, it's like the pictures in my head," she said, eyes sparkling. Me? I felt like I'd stretched my wings for the first time in years. Back home, 1972 was a good year. Southern Comfort was packed most nights, Meadow House had a waiting list, and the sewing studio churned out orders like nobody's business. For the first time, I bought a used car, a beat-up but sturdy Chevy. Learning to drive at 35 was no picnic, wrestling with the clutch like it was a stubborn mule. "If guys can do it, so can I muttered, grinding gears. Joseph, bless him, didn't hover or offer to take over. He knew my independence was my lifeline. Then, mid-year, news hit like a curveball. Helen called from Chicago. Carol, William's ex, had died in a car crash. Worse, Richard, their 11-year-old son, my girl's half-brother, was headed to an orphanage because his stepdad wanted nothing to do with him. The thought of that boy, alone and scared, haunted me. He was tied to William, the man who shattered our lives, but he was just a kid carrying the weight of his parents' mistakes. Over dinner, Joseph noticed me staring into space. "What's on your mind, Jane?" I spilled it. Richard, his loneliness, the unfairness of it all. Joseph listened, steady as ever. "You've got a heart bigger than this town. If you feel called to help, do it. I'm with you." I sat the girls down the next morning, laying out Richard's story, his connection to them, his situation. Mary Ann, practical as always, asked about logistics, his age, room space, legal hurdles. Elizabeth's eyes lit up. "A brother? Can we get him today?" It wasn't simple, a divorced woman with no blood tie to the kid, fighting state red tape, but I'd tackled worse. We started the custody process, turning a storage room into a bedroom with fresh paint and a cosy bed. Mary Ann donated books, Elizabeth shared art supplies, and Anthony, Joseph's son, tossed in his old toy cars. By December 1972, after months of legal wrangling, we got temporary custody. Joseph came with me to Chicago to pick Richard up from a grim orphanage. He was William's spitting image, same brown eyes, same stubborn chin, but pale, wary, clutching a tiny suitcase. "Are you my mum's family?" he asked, confused. I kept it simple. "No, sweetheart, but you've got 2 sisters, my daughters. Your dad was my husband before your mum." Bringing him home was like planting a seed in rocky soil. Richard was quiet, testing boundaries, scarred by loss. Mary Ann kept her distance, cautious. Elizabeth dove in, guiding him like a big sister, showing him the ropes of our world. Early 1973 was tough. Richard woke screaming from nightmares, calling for his mum. I'd hold him, humming the lullabies I'd sung to my girls, until he settled. Slowly he found solace in books, devouring stories like they were air. "He's got Mary Ann's brain," Elizabeth said one day, watching him lost in an adventure novel. "And your smile, Mom, when he lets it slip." My heart caught. Richard wasn't mine by blood, but he was mine by choice. A chance to rewrite his story, just like I'd rewritten ours. In July 1973, we got permanent custody. We threw a big lunch at Southern Comfort, cake and all. "It's like a new birthday," Elizabeth told Richard, "the day you became ours." Watching my girls and this boy fate had brought us, I thought back to the starry-eyed Clark who fell for a slick banker. She dreamed of a perfect life, straight out of a magazine. Real life was messier, painful, surprising, but so much richer. Our scars, mine, Mary Ann's, Elizabeth's, Richard's, weren't just wounds. They were proof we could break and still build something beautiful. By early 1974, Meadow House was a hive of life, the boarding house upstairs, Southern Comfort bustling below, the sewing studio humming out back. Vines climbed the walls outside, like nature saying, "Life finds a way." America was reeling from Watergate, but in our corner of Springfield we kept our rhythm. Mary Ann, now 16, was a force, serious, sharp, acing advanced classes and dead set on engineering school. "I want to build things that last, Mum," she'd say, nose in math books. William's name never crossed her lips anymore. She'd buried that pain with him. Elizabeth, 13, was blooming as an artist, her paintings brightening the restaurant's walls, earning customer oohs and ahs. She still flipped through a small album of William's photos, curious about the dad she barely knew. Richard, 12, had come a long way from the scared kid in Chicago. He shone in literature and history at school and became Aurora's kitchen sidekick, learning her southern recipes. "He's got a knack for seasoning," Aurora bragged. "Knows when the beans need garlic or the sauce wants a bay leaf. It's a gift." Our patchwork family found its groove. Joseph and Anthony joined us for dinners, park Sundays, or trips to a friend's farm. Sure, we got looks, the divorced mum, the widower, our mixed-up kids. But I didn't care. We'd built something real, held together by love, not convention. When a fire gutted Springfield's orphanage in April 1974, leaving 20 kids homeless, it hit us hard. Richard, remembering his own orphanage days, looked shaken. "What happens to them now, Mum?" he asked, voice small. The answer bubbled up like it was meant to be. "We can take some in," I said over dinner. "There's that big storage room behind the restaurant we barely use." Joseph's eyes met mine, that quiet understanding we'd built over years sparking. "I'll handle the renovations, bathrooms, walls, the works," he offered. Mary Ann was already crunching numbers. "Beds, linens, closets, we'll need a plan." Elizabeth buzzed with excitement. "I'll teach them painting." Richard, quieter, nodded. "I'll show them it's not like the orphanage here, it's family." That's how Flower Shelter was born. We started with 5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys, ages 7 to 10, turning the storage room into a cosy temporary home. Joseph led the construction, boarders donated furniture and clothes, and restaurant regulars chipped in cash and toys. Aurora rallied volunteer cooks to feed our new crew. The juvenile judge raised an eyebrow. "Think you can handle this, Mrs. Sanders?" I didn't blink. "I know I can. I've got a whole community behind me." The kids arrived in May, clutching what little the fire hadn't claimed, eyes wide with fear. Richard stepped up, knowing their terror firsthand. "Nobody yells here, Joaquin," he told the youngest, a 7-year-old, "and the food, best in town." Those first days were a whirlwind, sorting routines, soothing traumas. Anna, 9, woke screaming from fire nightmares. Peter, 10, pushed every boundary, waiting for punishment. Twins, Sophie and Claire, 8, stuck together like glue. Slowly, we found our rhythm. The kids went to public school, and afternoons were filled with activities. Mary Ann taught math, Elizabeth art, Richard read stories, and Anthony, Joseph's son, kicked a soccer ball around the yard. Older boarders, many teachers, tutored. What started as a stopgap stretched past the orphanage's rebuild 3 months later. "We've never had a place like this," Sophie said, speaking for the twins. The judge, seeing their progress, gave us temporary custody, with social workers checking in. In July, the city's social services offered a small monthly grant to formalise Flower Shelter as a community hub, not an institution. "You're giving these kids a real home," the director said. "The money let us dream bigger." Joseph sketched plans for an annex on a lot we bought with Williams' insurance savings. A simple house for 15 more kids, with study rooms and a dining hall. Construction hummed along by September when a letter from Miami shook things up. It was from Olivia Richards, William's mum, who we'd thought was long gone. In shaky handwriting, she explained she'd lost touch with her son after he left Chicago, only learning of his death years later. Now, nearing the end herself, she wanted to meet her grandchildren, Mary Ann, Elizabeth and Richard, her son's child from his second marriage. I shared the letter with the kids. Mary Ann, guarded, muttered, "Why now?" Elizabeth lit up. "A grandma! I've always wanted one on Dad's side." Richard, thoughtful, said, "I want to hear what Dad was like as a kid." I invited Olivia to visit. When she stepped off the bus, frail and leaning on a cane, her eyes, William's eyes, Richard's eyes, cut through me. I gave her the best room in Meadow House, and that first night after the kids were asleep, we talked. Olivia shared a secret William never knew. His dad left when he was 5, and she raised him alone, sewing for families and boarding him during the week. He grew up wounded, she said, tears falling, always chasing approval to fill that hole. I don't excuse what he did to you, Jane, but maybe it explains. It didn't erase his choices, but it gave them shape. William, the abandoned boy, became the man who abandoned us, but we could break that cycle. My kids wouldn't carry that pain forward. Olivia stayed a month, a quiet gift. She told Richard stories of young William, fueling his curiosity. She taught Elizabeth old embroidery stitches that popped up in her art. Even Mary Ann warmed to her, bonding over Olivia's knack for numbers from her days as a bookkeeper. The night before she left, Olivia pulled me aside in the garden. "Jane, can I come back, be part of their lives?" I didn't hesitate. The kids deserve all the love they can get. You're always welcome. December brought the flower shelter's grand opening. The new annex gleamed, ready for 15 more kids, with plans to grow. At the ceremony, Mary Ann gave tours, Elizabeth's paintings brightened the walls, and Richard served Aurora's snacks. The original 5 kids, now confident, mingled with Joseph, Anthony, my boarders, seamstresses, and Olivia, who'd returned for the day. The mayor called it a small miracle. I shook my head. We built this, every single person here. In 1975, Mary Ann, 16, aced her entrance exams for civil engineering at the University of Illinois in Chicago, a huge win for a small-town girl in a male-dominated field. Elizabeth, 13, wavered between art and medicine. "I want to create beauty and heal," she said. Richard, 12, leaned toward teaching, his love for books and history growing. Then, in March, the big news. Mary Ann got into college. Pride mixed with nerves. My firstborn was leaving the nest. Olivia stepped in, offering her vacant Chicago apartment. "Safer than dorms," she said. Mary Ann, softening to her grandma, agreed. We packed her up, laughing and crying. The night before she left, she admitted, "I'm scared, Mum. What if I'm just a small-town girl?" I held her close. "You're the daughter of a woman who started from nothing. That strength's in you." Joseph drove us to the bus station. Mary Ann hugged everyone, Elizabeth, Richard, Anthony, Aurora, Joseph. "Take care, sweetheart," I whispered, throat tight. "You've always got a home here." Back at Meadow House, Elizabeth stepped up, taking on some of Mary Ann's chores. Richard grew more independent, and Joseph was around daily, helping with the shelter's now 12 kids. In May, a local TV show, Today's Woman, wanted to feature me. The woman who turned heartbreak into an empire. I balked. Fame wasn't my thing, but the social workers said it'd help the shelter. The June broadcast showed Meadow House, Southern Comfort, the Atelier, and Flower Shelter, telling my story simply: the broken marriage, the fight to rebuild, taking in Richard, starting the shelter. Letters poured in from women like me, asking for advice, offering donations, volunteering. "You're a celebrity," Richard teased. Elizabeth's words hit deeper. "Now other women know they're not alone, Mom. Something beautiful can come from pain." Elizabeth found her calling in art therapy, blending her love for creating beauty with healing hearts at the College of Fine Arts. Richard, shining in school, dove into literature, set on becoming a teacher. Flower Shelter grew thanks to donations and its new status as a public utility. By 1978, we built another annex welcoming 30 kids with programs for art, education and independence. Joseph and I, after years of our quirky, not-quite marriage, made it official, not with papers, but with a heartfelt ceremony in Meadow House's garden in 1979. "No documents needed to prove what we've got," Joseph said, always respecting the independence I'd fought for. In January 1980, flipping through photo albums that held our wild, winding journey, I got word that Olivia, William's mum, had passed peacefully in Miami. She'd made peace with her grandchildren and her son's tangled legacy, leaving her Chicago apartment to Mary Ann, Elizabeth and Richard in equal parts, a final gesture to mend wounds she didn't cause. That summer we hosted Flower Shelter's first reunion, bringing back kids who'd grown up and moved on. Joaquin, the scared 7-year-old from the orphanage fire, now 13, stood tall and declared, "I want to do for others what Mrs. Sanders did for us, show families more than blood." My heart swelled, like a garden blooming after a long winter. That August, sitting among the roses and sunflowers I'd planted, I looked back on the road I'd travelled. The 19-year-old clerk who fell for a charming banker was long gone, replaced by a 43-year-old woman, business owner, mum to biological and chosen kids, unofficial grandma to dozens from the shelter. My scars, abandonment, betrayal, struggle were still there, but like I told the kids, they're medals of survival, proof of battles won. That golden afternoon with children's laughter, boarders chatting, and the smell of Aurora's fresh bread wafting from southern comfort, I felt gratitude, not for the pain, but for the strength I found in its ashes, the community I built from ruins, the beauty that grew where nothing should have survived. Now, at 83, when young folks ask how I did it, how I faced a world that branded divorced women as failures, that doubted a single mum could run businesses and raise kids, I keep it simple. One step, one day, one choice at a time. The end of one dream isn't the end of all dreams. Our deepest wounds can become our greatest gifts if we turn pain into empathy, not bitterness, if we build instead of break. Meadow House, Southern Comfort, the Atelier, and Flower Shelter still thrive, run by a board including my kids, former shelter residents, and community members. Joseph passed 5 years ago, peaceful in his sleep after a life full of love. Mary Ann's a renowned engineer, designing affordable homes. Elizabeth's an art therapist, touching lives worldwide. Richard teaches American literature, inspiring students with his passion. In 2015, Springfield named a square after me, Jane Sanders Square, with a plaque calling me a visionary social entrepreneur. Nice, sure, but my real legacy isn't stone or words. It's in the eyes of every kid who found their path through Flower Shelter, in the women who left abusive homes inspired by my story, in the businesses that create jobs and dignity. To you reading this, here's my parting thought. Don't fear the ashes. The fires that seem to destroy can spark something new, something beautiful, flowers nobody expected, blooming against all odds. I'm Jane Olivia Sanders. I was a wife, abandoned, judged. But that was just the start. What defined me was what I chose next, the strength I didn't know I had, the love that let me embrace even the sun of betrayal. From ashes, I grew a garden. You can too. Thanks for sticking with my story, friends.